What's up, y'all? It's the better late than never Friday live stream. This is the co-working live stream, but it is preempted a little bit because of an article I read this morning, and it's something that I wanted to discuss a long time. I've been kind of tiptoeing around whether I want to talk straight up political stuff on this platform, but when it does impact people um, like me that are going to be directly impacted by it, I'm not going to hold my tongue. So we're going to talk about the RFK agenda for neurodivergent people. Um, and what that means, and just kind of get sharing my thoughts on it. So that's what we're going to do on this co-working live stream. So if you came just for the co-work, I apologize, but hopefully we can actually have a conversation about this. So we're going to roll the intro and we're going to get into this thing. Okay, so let me go ahead and make sure that we're streaming on Facebook the right way. So just give me a second here. But one of the things we need to discuss regarding how we discuss neurodivergence um, as a whole, as a society, um, I see a lot of people who have they either interact with kids with ADHD, or they have kids with ADHD, or they may have ADHD themselves and have either been diagnosed or undiagnosed or don't acknowledge their diagnosis. Is the way people talk about autism and ADHD and all kinds of other things that fall into that realm of what's considered neurodivergence. Um, we talk about it and we pathologize it. We treat it like it's a thing that's broken that needs to be fixed, um, as opposed to managed. And that's highly problematic, and it's kind of created the situation that we're in right now, where we have gone so far down the rabbit hole of pathologizing neurodivergent people, and that it made room for an RFK to step in and really just I can't even describe how I'm feeling watching him talk about people like me and people I know and kids and stuff who aren't neurotypical. And neurotypical means you don't have anything out there that impacts how your brain works. Um, I know that it's supposed to come off as empathetic or feel sorry for it, but it feels like he's talking about a freak show. I'm keeping it real. It feels like when he talks about people with autism and ADHD, it feels like he's discussing um, what he considers to be a freak show. So, and I'm creating a master list, so I'm not leaving anybody out. But I wanted to talk about it, and I have an outline and stuff. And I'm going to work that in between working sessions or whatnot. But I really felt like this is kind of a format to do it. So I'm trying to decide if I want to front load the conversation and then do the work afterwards, or do the work and intercut the conversation. So if anybody's listening, let me know what your preference is. But I still do need to have the conversation about the temperature of American life for neurodivergent people, and what it means with RFK in the mix, and how his agenda. Because the thing that got me on this path is reading. Now he wants to go through Medicaid and Medicare records to identify autistic people. And not only does it kind of it circumvents HIPAA violations, but for what purpose? Why do we need a registry of autistic people? There's no way that doesn't sound sinister. There's no way it doesn't sound sinister. Um, and I guess my issue with it is, and the reason why I feel prompted to do this is because I do have a platform, and it's a small platform, and I have a small community of people that mess with me and whatnot, and I appreciate every single one of you. But I do want to give voice to this because my goal is to create a resource for individuals with ADHD. And so if we don't have a place where it feels safe and you don't feel like you have somebody who's going to defend us, then what point is having a platform and having a place to be? What point is it? So we do need to have a conversation about RFK's agenda and how he discusses and how he talks about um, neurodivergent people in general, autistic people specifically, but um, other indie uh, categories. So it's autism, attention deficit. I might leave some out, so don't feel like you get left out if I do. Autism, attention deficit disorder, dyslexia, when the reading, I can't even say it. Dyslexia with math, um, dysgraphia, writing, um, and dypraxia, Tourette syndrome, um, any kind of sensory disorder. And then we go into the mental health stuff like OCD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, schizoaffective, generalized anxiety, post traumatic stress, complex PTSD, and depression. And hopefully I didn't leave anybody out, but these are all things that kind of fall under that umbrella of neurodivergence. And so we talk about it. I think we've kind of had this, the way that we talk about it, the way we frame that conversation in America is treating it like these are all things that need to be fixed as opposed to managed. And people are broken and we're dealing with broken brains and broken people. And I don't think that is an effective way to talk about a pretty significant size of the chunk of the population. Um, and specifically when I talk about RFK, and I don't want to be alarmist, and that's not what my intent is, but it is alarming hearing when you go back and mind some of the stuff that he said in podcast appearances and talk shows and all other stuff. The way he talks about people with neurodivergence should set off every warning bell in your head. As parents, it should instantly put up your protective instincts because his version of treatment involves erasing autistic people, um, erasing them, pretending like they do not exist, or removing them from society. And I don't think that that's a beneficial way. Well, I don't think it's beneficial. I'm trying to be a little too nice. It's bullshit. We're making people who just process the world differently or experience the world differently and need some level of accommodation. We are making them into walking diseases that need to be cured. And whenever we start talking about people needing to be cured or fixed, it goes down a really dark path where you start drifting more into the eugenic side of things. And so, like I said, it should set off the alarm bells when we start hearing about how RFK and the Make America Healthy kind of movement talks about people with ADHD and autism and depression and stuff like that. So that's what I'm throwing out there. I do have some work to do, and I don't necessarily know how to parse this. I don't know if it's more beneficial to front load all of the conversation. Um, and have the conversation first and the work second, or intersperse the work with the conversation. I don't know what the best approach is with this. And so I'm kind of winging it and seeing what works for people. Um, so I guess I'm gonna go ahead and start with what I wanted to say regarding the RFK thing. And then if it feels natural, I'll jump over to the work side of things because I do have stuff I need to get done. Okay. So when we talk about this stuff, and we talk about the community that we exist in, I think a lot of times it falls down. People think of the problems that people have with dealing with kids that have ADHD, whether it's the hyperactive side or the attention, the inattentive side, and we focus on the problems that they create for their family or whatnot. And for a lot of people who live with them on a day-to-day basis, it's not problems. You just kind of learn how to interact with us and how to accommodate us and love us regardless. Um, there are things that do need to be managed and aspects of it that do make it hard to interact sometimes. But when we talk about people like they are pieces of a disease that needs to be eradicated, we end up stripping them of their humanity. And no matter how well intentioned you are with that, whenever you start talking about eradicating autism or eradicating ADHD or fixing it or curing it, you are essentially removing somebody's humanity, because these are just ways that somebody perceives the world. And sometimes with the stuff going on in your brain, you just need accommodations. You need to feel safe in your own skin to be who you are. And it feels like there's a real sense of we have to make everybody normal. And that's insidious to me. I don't like that. So I'm gonna jump into it here. So my issue with RFK, and it's not that, to be honest with you, this doesn't have anything to do with the politics side of things, because there are aspects of what RFK does which would more align with some of my politics. I'm starting to realize not many of them, but there are aspects of the things that he champions. On the surface level, there's a tacit agreement. It's a very weak one, but so it's not. This isn't a political thing. I do have an issue with an unqualified person spouting fixes for populations of people that sometimes do need professional intervention. I don't like that. So anyway, but RFK's history with neurodivergence is he's known for promoting debunked vaccine autism bullshit. Like he's known for kind of advancing that and forcing a causation where the science basically shows that that's not there's nothing to really back that up empirically, and it's something that's always being tested, and science tries to constantly disprove itself. And so there is a piece of it that's still that's still being tested, but nothing in the test has shown that link. A lot of times we say, well, there's more autistic people now than ever before. Well, it's because we're getting better at identifying it. Um, you know, the old guy that's super hyper fixated on trains and clocks and stuff like that, there was no category for him. It was just something he was obsessed with weirdly in old society. And now that would have been something that would have been a flag, say, hey, we probably need to evaluate this guy for autism or see if there's some other things going on. So, the example I always go back to, and it's a really dark example, so forgive me. The example I do go back to is if you ever seen Full Metal Jacket and the Private Pile, Lawrence, the one they call Private Pile. He was, in my estimation, he was coded as a neurodivergent individual. And he was dropped into an environment where it was not only set up for him to fail, it was, if he did survive or did manage to succeed in boot camp, he was surely sent off to die. And it was a form of eugenics that they practiced, where they find people that would normally wouldn't make it through the screening process, and you put them on the front lines. And so he kind of represented that. Really next level inhumane treatment in the movie, but it is a reflection of how we used to deal with neurodivergence. I know specifically in the Kennedy family, I mean, hell, they lobotomized one of their own because she was dealing with what seemed to be some kind of anxiety or depression, and they ended up lobotomizing her and destroyed her life after that. And so if there's a frame of reference to tie to it, we could say that there might be a frame of reference that he's a specific framework that he's working off of in his own family. His framing of autism and neurodivergence as damage rather than just a different way of perceiving the world. That's a problem. Um, if you have ADHD, if you have autism, if you're neurodivergent in any way, shape, or form, you are not a broken person. You're not a damaged person. You perceive the world differently. You experience the world differently. And sometimes you need a different way to navigate, or you need a toolbox to help you navigate through the world like everybody else does. But that doesn't mean that there's something broken about you. And specifically in a lot of communities and stuff like that, I can say, being black with ADHD, the experience is a different kind of experience about how it's referred to in the community, because it's like we're going to beat the ADHD out of you. If the kid's hyperactive, we're going to whoop them out of it. We're going to punish it out of him or her. They're just the idea that it's just we're just dealing with a bad kid and stuff like that. Yes, there are behaviors that are manageable, but then there's also an aspect of it that does require a different approach. And so I've seen it in my own community about how we talk about kids that have different neurological things going on. And we treat it like it's all a behavior that can be controlled. So the legacy set the stage, like his legacy, I believe, did kind of set the stage for his views on ADHD, depression, and treatment, because you're dealing with somebody that had some kind of addiction. I think it was heroin. Um, his family literally lobotomized one of their own for having anxiety and depression. And so we're talking about the framework that underpins some of these beliefs that he's espousing. If you want to jump in the comments, we can. And I'm going to be starting the timer here because I don't want to talk this entire time. And I do have stuff to do. Okay. So if you've been following it, dude has been super critical of psychiatric medications. He's made specious claims to SSRIs being linked to school shootings. And really, like factually unprovable statements that there's a tremendous circumstantial evidence that SSRIs and benzos are driving school shootings, which is patently ridiculous. We've had school shootings for as long as we've had public schools and guns in this country. We just didn't have a 24-hour news cycle. And so it's blaming, because when you start getting into that, essentially what you're doing is you're blaming the neurological condition on something that's violent and dangerous for society. It's a dangerous road to go down. And when you attribute depression medication or medication for ADHD with that kind of thing, you're essentially saying that people that have been diagnosed with that are a simmering danger to themselves and others. Okay. He's compared SSRIs to heroin in terms of addictiveness, and that is contradicted by all major psychiatric and addiction research bodies. Like, that is complete and utter bullshit. Complete bullshit. For my ADHD, for a long time I was unmedicated, and then when I needed additional help just to manage my job, I started on. I think they started me on Strattera. And Strattera was okay, but it was really like I was getting like 3 hours of sleep at night and being fine. And that is not something I was ever used to. And it was really weird for me because I'm like, I am not getting enough sleep and I'm perfectly fine with it. And so they moved me to Vyvanse, and then a small dose of Adderall, and that was kind of that worked for what I needed it to do. It did strip away a lot of my other personality when the medication was on board, Um, and that created problems interpersonally. But from a work standpoint, I was able to get stuff done. Part of the medication management with ADHD, it does involve a lot of testing and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. Currently, um, the combination I'm on, I think it's Wellbutrin, and that has been kind of my little miracle drug. Like that's the one that actually works. Um, and I don't have to deal with the stimulant stuff. It does make me a little bit more confrontational. I have a much lower tolerance for bullshit, and a lot of it has to do with I don't have a negative inner voice that's challenging me all the time. And so if I feel like I am being disrespected, whereas before I would let it slide, I will absolutely say something and challenge people on things. And so people around me have kind of noticed that I have a much lower tolerance for bullshit, um, and bad treatment. Um, and I used to internalize all that stuff, and I do not anymore. But the attack on the medication that helps people, is super problematic. Okay. Um, uh, Comparing the SSRIs, the stuff that's normally used to treat depression and other things, comparing that to heroin is disingenuous at best. And it's almost it's almost allowing him to position himself as an expert because he was on heroin for 14 years. When these two things have nothing, where SSRIs have nothing to do with heroin. And the similarities have been disproven by every research body that's imaginable. Okay. This misinformation deters people from seeking treatment, and it increases the stigma. One of the things that people don't understand when you have ADHD and it's to a point where is impacting aspects of your life, it is a very uncomfortable way to live in your own skin. If you're not getting um, the medical, the medication that you need, or if you're not getting the therapeutic stuff that you need, it's a very difficult way to navigate life, because what happens is you are constantly in a world full of normal people, and you don't function the way they do, and you have no frame of reference to connect to. And it's a super uncomfortable way to exist. And when you intentionally scare people off from actually being treated, because that's what this is, that's what all this registry talk is doing. It's a chilling effect where people who would go out and normally get diagnosed to find an answer for why their brain works the way it does aren't going to seek it. They will not, for fear of what this registry actually means for them. And I'll get into that later on, because I'll get into that a little bit later on. We're going to get some work done, but I want to point out, I do want to point out some of the things that he said regarding, um, before I take the break, before we get into our work break. I do want to point out some of the things that he's mentioned regarding his version of treatment for people who are neurodivergent. Okay. So his views on ADHD are pretty, are troubling, and it instantly, when I first heard it, it just kind of, it set my teeth on edge. So and I'm quoting this, so I'm kind of reading this off a monitor. RFK says, "Our kids are on Adderall and they're all on SSRIs. Why? Doctors didn't start prescribing these for no reason. We have damaged this entire generation." Just that phrasing. Your child with autism, your child with ADHD is not damaged. You as an individual who has ADHD or autism is not damaged. You are not damaged. And the framing of that is so sickening, to say that they're damaged, like there's something wrong with them that needs to be fixed. And knowing what his viewpoint of fixing that is, his version of fixing that, the frame of reference he's coming from was he had an aunt who got lobotomized. To fix her depression and fix her anxiety. She got lobotomized. Okay. So when he says that we have damaged this entire generation, that is insidious. And he'll say, "Oh, I don't mean it like that," but then he'll run off the craziest damn stereotypes that he has, uh, and he has no working experience with kids with ADHD or autism. I have more working experience with kids with ADHD and autism than RFK could ever have, because I used to work with kids with ADHD and autism and other neurodivergent, anything else that fit under the neurodivergent umbrella. I worked with that group of kids, and they're like every other group of children. They just need they need some kinds of accommodations, and sometimes there is some behavioral stuff you have to learn or unlearn in order to function and survive in society. But there was nothing broken about these children, and he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about when he says that. These are all stereotypes that he's dreamt up in his head. And it works on stupid people. It works on people that reduce other human beings down to their neurological conditions, as opposed to viewing them as an entire person. So, and it falls in line with RFK's, because he has a long history of environmentalism and stuff like that, and being tied to environmentalism based causes. And so his suggestion is ADHD and other diagnoses are due to environmental toxicity and not neurodevelopmental differences. So my brain didn't, isn't wired differently. It's because my brain is damaged and poisoned according to his calculus. And when I thought that I was damaged, those were some of the darkest moments of my life. I'm not damaged. You aren't damaged. If you have ADHD, you aren't damaged. If you have autism, you aren't damaged. You maneuver through the world in a different way. And the help you need is learning how to do that so that it doesn't, so that you're able to navigate the world and be successful at it. I'm gonna warn you. And so this is probably we're gonna take the work break here because I'm gonna warn you. I'm giving you the heads up. The next part of this gets into the racist part of this. And so if you aren't adult enough to deal with conversations surrounding race, then you might need to not be around when we come back for that. So we're going to get into the work piece of it, because I don't want to spend the entire time dominating the conversation with all that. But I do feel like we do need to have this conversation. And it's something I got to get off my chest. And I feel like there's a bigger conversation to be had here. But like I said, the next part of this, when we come back, is going to be about the racist bullshit that RFK's on. If I can't, that's the only way I can plainly put it. There's some racist stuff that comes along with it, specifically when it comes to Black kids and ADHD and autism. So we're going to get this timer running here. If I can get the timer running here. Oh, there's my 10-minute timer. So we're going to get the timer started. And we got about 8, 7, 6. All right. And we're working for right now. those that are curious, I'm actually setting up um, a payment portal um, for a new service that we're rolling out. Um, because I own a couple of businesses, and so for our athletic training business, um, we're working with a strength coach, and so what I'm doing is I'm um, setting up a payment portal so that we can collect uh, payments, and I can start running the service. Nope. Let's see if we phrase it from it like that. There's a piece of this that's missing. Sorry if y'all keep hearing the dinging. I am working, y'all. And I get messages through my Facebook and stuff because I do have business I'm taking care of. All right, that's 10. Like I said, I'm trying to keep this beneficial for y'all. I like to talk out what I have going on in terms of tasks so I don't forget shit while I'm working on this. And so forgive me, but I do have one. I have to send out email blast. Here's what it is. And so that's going to be the next sprint, the next thing I do on my sprint. All right, let's get to chopping this fable about RFK again. And so I did pre-warn you. So now we're going to go into the racial aspect of this. And it's not my fault. He's the one who racialized it. So here we go. Okay. So RFK has stated that Black youth are disproportionately medicated with Adderall and SSRIs, drugs he claims are known to induce violence. Now, I can tell you, my entire background comes working kids and families and juvenile probation and the whole nine. When I tell you that each prison in the country has a whole lot of people that are in fact in jail for untreated ADHD, untreated bipolar disorder, untreated anxiety disorder, and disproportionately some of them are Black and brown because those things aren't afforded to us when we get into legal trouble. The assumption is that this is a bad kid and they're inherently violent, and there is no going below the surface. And in the cases where there is therapy ordered, sometimes the families can't afford the therapy, or sometimes there's no attempt to connect culturally competent therapists with marginalized families. And what that turns into is you have therapists that uh, don't really diagnose these kids or families, or don't build any kind of rapport with these kids or families to do appropriate diagnosis and get them the help that they need. And so the prisons are filled with kids that have with adults that have untreated neurodivergent issues. And since nobody's ever made a place for them to thrive safely, they chose another path. Now, to saying that these things induce violence, the treatments induce violence, is a lie. And it deters people from seeking treatment and increases the stigma again. And so his proposal is that these children be reparented in tech-free environments. And that's institutionalizing kids. Replace reparenting with reeducated. So instead of providing people the resource to thrive in the community, he wants to remove Black kids with ADHD or autism from the community and put them in institutions to re-educate them. What is this? And how does that benefit them? Specifically, if the idea is we're going to reintegrate people into society, how does that benefit people? By removing them from the society that they have to live in and putting them in a sterile environment that doesn't teach them how to adjust. It just treats them as things that need to be locked away and managed. That's the racialized aspect of this, y'all. So it always, the tail end of it always leads to institutionalism. And when we talk to, when we go back and look at the school to prison pipeline, that is echoing what that problem is, where kids are institutionalized from the school and they're shipped directly to jailhouses and stuff because they're shipped straight to juvenile detention. I had a friend, one of my friends I was growing up with, his mom would pull him out of school to watch his siblings. Because she couldn't afford daycare. And then that's when the county attorney starts stepping in and saying, this kid is truant. And now you are in that system. And that's how it happens for kids of color. That's what happens to Black kids specifically in school systems. We never address the root cause of it. And RFK's championing of remove them and put them in tech-free environments and reparent them. What the hell does that even mean? Instead of giving the parents the resources to manage this kid at home, we're going to remove them and stick them with people that they don't know. It's dark stuff, bro. And so when we talk about how we discuss people who have neurodivergence, people that have autism, people that have ADHD, people that are dealing with depression, bipolar disorder, any of one of those. When we talk about how we address them and how we treat them and how stuff like that, when you start talking about instantly jumping up the ladder to institutionalizing them, as opposed to let's try some medication management and see what happens, see if we can manage some of the symptoms with medication. When we jump over that and move to institutionalizing people, that's where you start creating differential experiences. That's what happens. You start talking about institutionalized people, you create differential experiences, because I can tell you from experience, I've had cases that were in juvenile court, and I've seen kids that had similar backgrounds, similar case histories, even similar charges get sentenced to different things just because of their where they were on the socioeconomic, where they were socioeconomically on the strata, where they fell. I've seen it happen. I've seen Black kids get sentenced to out of home care for things that I've seen white kids in the suburbs get sentenced to therapy for. And there was an assumption there that the black parents either would not or could not provide the therapy when they had more means than the white family did. But they didn't know that. Having another conversation with them and saying, "This is why the judge is doing this, and we can push back against this and absolutely put services in place, but you guys got to participate in them." So when we start having these conversations about people with ADHD, we have to be very careful about how we're not just discussing people like they're just bundles of symptoms that need to be addressed. Um, One aspect of the institutionalizing that is really, really frightening to me is wellness farms. And these are his ideas. I am not making this shit up. Wellness farms. He wants government funded wellness farms designed to wean people off Adderall, S, SSRIs, benzos, and illegal drugs. Now, here's the issue with that. When you put Adderall and SSRIs in the same category with these are street drugs, you're combining two populations of people that's you can't do that. They're not, it's not the same thing. If you understand what I'm saying, you're going to have some crossover. There's going to be crossover in the populations because a lot of neurodivergent people, if they do not get the help that they need, they end up self-medicating, and it can be any variety of things that they self-medicate with. It could be drugs, it could be sex, it could be violence, it could be any self-destructive thing. But when you just uniformly say SSRIs and stimulants for ADHD are exactly the same thing as illegal drugs, now you're basically criminalizing neurodivergence. And so he wants to put people in government farms to wean them off of those things. And it's based on organic farming, tech-free living, and reparenting style communities. What the hell does any of that mean? I've worked in an organization where they had a farm that kids could volunteer to work on. They were in homes with parents, with family teachers. And largely it was tech-free because the kids weren't allowed to have smartphones. What are you talking about? If he's talking about a boys' town, yeah, but you can't do that just to adults, man. And not every kid placed in Boys Town needed to be in Boys Town. What they needed was somebody to provide resources to their parents so they could maintain them in the community. Not everybody needed to jump to residential care outside of the home. And that's where you have professionals involved in the process along the way, and not just unilaterally saying, if you have ADHD or if you are on antidepressants, you need to be shipped off to a work farm. We don't need like that. That's a leap. That's just jumping. That's skipping so many steps, and it's literally removing individualized care for people, all because of some goofy form and heroin addict in his mind of what he thinks is this utopic society. A utopic society where everybody's normal and we all think the same. So the problem with this is there's no scientific basis for this kind of recovery model. And so when we start getting into treatment facilities and residential care facilities and whatnot, there is a process of evidence basing your treatment model. Okay. And for better or worse, a place like Boys Town has an evidence based model. Now, the way that they've reached there are people that do criticize the way that that evidence-based designation is achieved, but there's evidence basis behind it. They have to prove efficacy, and they have to collect data and show efficacy across thousands and thousands of kids. Okay. The other side is it raises huge flags for autonomy, body integrity, And it's institutionalism. You're institutionalizing people. Okay. And really it's just taking, it's basically repackaging the shit that they used to do to neurodivergent people in the past, where there was lobotomies and shock treatment, and they would send people off to the funny farm, all those things that they used to do. This is just repackaging it and giving it new age bullshit names, because you're extracting members of society from society because you don't want to deal with the fact that they're different. Take that how you will. You're forcibly extracting people from society because their being different scares you or unsettles you. You're uncomfortable with the fact that they perceive the world differently and require different things to function and be successful. And instead of adjusting and creating a space and a pathway for them within the society, you want to pull them out of society and make them normal. Not to mention that you're playing a dangerous game when you forcibly remove somebody who has severe depression from depression medication. You're playing a dangerous, dangerous game if you think all they need to do is work. One, that sounds like some third right shit, to be honest with you. Or fourth right shit. It sounds like something out of a fascist playbook somewhere. But two, you don't know what those medications, how those medications are preventing them from harming themselves or anything else. You don't know. And when you just use this big straw brushstroke to say people that are on antidepressant meds just need to be weaned off of them, and then what? You're going to remove it. And it's troubling to me because it's not just the words that he says. It's not just the fact he says. It's now that he has the power. He has the power to actually prevent people from being able to have antidepressants and stimulants for ADHD. He has the ability to remove people's medication from them unilaterally with no professional in the room, with no doctor guiding this, with no mental health professional guiding this, with no psychiatrist guiding this. He is unilateral. He has the power to unilaterally remove people from access to the medication that may be saving their lives because of what's in his brain and what's the stereotypes that run through his brain. This is why RFK is dangerous. And whatever way you're going, whatever way you have to be able to defend against them coming in and removing your medication, remove your kids' medication. It's time to start figuring that out, because there's some insidious things that are coming out of HHS right now. All right, let's get back to work. Yeah, because we got a one more work sprint here, and then I'll finish up about the RFK thing, and then I got to go pick up my daughter from school here. So, we're gonna set the timer for 10. We're gonna finish out this last work sprint. I got email blast I need to send off, and so that's what I got coming up. All right, let's do this. Oh, by the way, for the people that whoever decided that when you have an online service like an email service or something, that you're going to direct me to the landing page to get me to sign up instead of the sign in page. I hate you. It's such a waste of time. I do not like you if you do that. I just don't. Take me to the sign in page and let me sign in. Okay, where did that come from? Let's go. No, that's not what I'm looking for. All right, there we go. Let's download this. So I'm doing an email campaign for a client. Do you guys think I should put an animated video in it instead of a regular flyer? What do you think? Nah, I don't want to get too fancy. For those that are just joining, we're in the middle of our work sprint. We got about 2 minutes to go. This is a co-working stream for ADHD brains. I know I've been ranting about RFK and stuff, but this is a co-working stream just so that you have an opportunity to knock out some stuff before the weekend. And it's based on the idea of body doubling. We work for 10 minutes and then we take a break. That's a small reward. All right, that's our 10 minutes here. I'm still working here. So if you want to continue working on, I will get back to my rant here. What does that mean? All right. So we're back. All right. More spam. Okay. So we talked about the racialized implications of what RFK said, and we talked about the idea of wellness farms, which is super insidious. Like, I don't, but there's going to be a specific impact on neurodivergent communities. Okay. And so we need to kind of go through step by step. One, um, is basically pathologizing difference. People that have different ways of processing or experiencing the world, whether it be sensory or whatever else, it pathologizes it, which basically means it makes it into a negative condition to exist in. And so, framing autism, ADHD, depressions as problems caused by poisoning or damage, you're essentially saying that these people are damaged and they need to be fixed, which is inherently a very ugly way to discuss other human beings. I'll just be quite honest with you. Um, and by saying that there's some kind of infection or disease, and since human beings think in metaphor, um, whenever something deviates from what we consider normal, we consider it an infestation. But infestation can also be a disease, and so it's playing with words in a way that invokes some very negative reactions from human beings in general. And why you say that autism is a disease that's infecting our brains and stuff like that, you're basically saying that autistic people are damaged in some way, shape, or form, and you must fix them, or you must repair them, or you must prevent them from existing. And I don't want y'all to walk away from that concept of we have to prevent these people from existing, because implications are as direct as your mind does not want to grasp, if that makes sense. Your mind is programmed to not go to that negative piece of it, but that's what the implications are. We have to prevent these people from existing. Well, how do we do that? Well, we have to make sure that there are fewer of them. Well, how do we do that? What does that mean? And what does that mean for the people that actually exist? Because what happens is that turns into an out of sight, out of mind. And when you say out of sight, out of mind, where do they go when they're out of sight? It also creates fear and distrust around things that have been proven to be effective treatments. You know, again, I can speak from experience. When you are initially diagnosed with ADHD, depending on your body chemistry and how your brain works and specific subtypes and all the other stuff, different treatments will work differently for you. And so typically they try out medications to see, we're going to try this and see how it works. All right. If it doesn't hit what we need it to hit, we're going to try this and see what works. And you start going down the line and trying out things and seeing what works and what doesn't work. When you don't even allow the pathway for people to start exploring about ways they can live in society comfortably, you are essentially effectively marginalizing people even further, because now they are under the banner of, well, I just don't fit in, and I think I have this, but I'm scared to go get diagnosed. It fuels ableism by framing neurodivergent people as victims of a societal failure, as opposed to people with just a diverse type of functioning and a diverse type of way we perceive the world. It took me a long time to realize that I wasn't damaged or broken. And sometimes I still do struggle with that. And having a jackass like RFK sitting up there talking about ADHD kids and ADHD adults and uh, kids with autism, like we're broken individuals, that doesn't help. That doesn't benefit us in general. Doesn't help um, us see ourselves as potential functioning members of society. It's already a struggle enough when your brain works differently than what society says your brain than what society says your brain is allowed to do. It functions in a different manner. It already messes with you. Okay. And it may push families towards untested, unregulated treatments away from community support. The dude that they brought in, his autism czar, has already been had his I don't even know if he's ever been licensed as a doctor or whether it was removed, but by giving kids what was it? Puberty blockers and stuff to address autism just because he had a wild hair up his ass and he wanted to try it. You know, let's see if this works. This is the guy that's in charge of our autism policy, guys. A guy that has had his medical license removed for subjecting autistic kids to him and his dad's weird, unproven therapies that nobody knows how effective they were. And there's no evidence to back it up. And when we do this to people, when we just unilaterally, because there's testing processes and stuff like that. And I know a lot of people are leery about the medical system, especially Black folks, and we have every reason to be. Historically, there is reasons why marginalized populations have issue with the medical establishment, because for a long time, the medical establishment, or not for a long time, but the medical establishment does have a white supremacy problem in a lot of senses. And, Black and brown folks have been guinea pigs more times than not in this country. But when there is effective treatment out there that's been proven to be safe in the vast number of cases in society, when you scare people off, you push them down the rabbit hole of, you push them down the pathway of untested stuff and stuff that somebody just dreamt up in their imagination. You go down that Sebi, the Dr. Sebi rabbit hole, and people think that that stuff is harmless until somebody dies from one of their treatments. There was a case pretty recently about I think the boy either had autism or ADHD. He was incinerated because his parents took him to some quack doctor whose treatment for, I think, is either autism or ADHD. I can't remember. His treatment for his neurodivergent child was to put them in an oxygen, one of those oxygen-rich environments. What is it? Iron lung. And a spark went off and incinerated the kid. A baby. Somebody's baby is gone because of some quack pushing unproved bullshit. It's dangerous when you start going down this rabbit hole of, and I'm gonna be factually accurate, so I'm gonna pull up this article while we're talking here. But it's dangerous. It's a dangerous path when you start doing this kind of stuff with these alternative medicines and stuff, because really what you're doing is you're dealing with somebody who's just spitballing and they have no evidence to back it up. And just because you tried it out and somebody told you, oh, it worked for me, that's not evidence. From a medical standpoint, clinical trials involve thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And for those that don't know or don't have any kind of framework around epidemiology, my mom was an epidemiologist. I saw how rigorous the stuff she had to go through was and the research she had to do. It was more intensive than any normal person could even fathom. Tell me about indie kid killed when oxygen. Because I want to be accurate. And I am spelling this bad. That's exactly what it was. All right. So the stories about the kid I was talking about is 5-year-old Thomas Cooper. He was receiving treatment for ADHD and sleep apnea, and he died in a hyperbaric chamber explosion at a medical facility in Troy, Michigan. The explosion occurred on January 31st of this year. 4 people have been charged in connection with this boy's death. The facility's founder and the CEO charged with second-degree murder. The facility has been criticized for prioritizing profits over patient safety and using hyperbaric oxygen methods not approved by the FDA. He was going through unproven quack bullshit to treat his ADHD. And his parents fell under the sway of quacks who put this child in a hyperbaric chamber and didn't have any safety precautions around it. And this child was incinerated in the explosion. This is the danger that this crap does. This is the danger that this shit does and presents to our population. And so I don't have patience for RFK. I don't have patience for people who run down a lot of this alternative medicine stuff without any evidence or science backing it up. And when they frame themselves as, instead of the alternative, they're the mainstream. Instead of working along with doctors, they decide that they're doctors themselves. This is the kind of stuff that happens. And then everybody, oh, it's not, oh, how could have this been prevented? It could have been prevented by actually seeking out real help instead of going down the quack route of bullshit. So, like I said, it pushes families towards untested and unregulated treatments and gets people killed. Okay. Um, so let's go look at how actual professionals who are qualified view some of what RFK is saying. Medical experts strongly reject links between SSRIs and mass shootings or addiction because there is none. Disability and neurodivergent advocates warn that his policies threaten our autonomy and dignity, which they absolutely do. Our ability to seek treatment and pursue treatments that work for us are good is it is in jeopardy of being removed because RFK has a thought about something that he knows nothing about. And so we have to be very vigilant about this stuff. Um, right now, there are parents right now out there that they don't want to get their kids diagnosed, and they'll continue to suffer in silence out of fear that their kid's going to end up on some mystery registry somewhere to be shipped off to a farm, dreamt up in the brain of a heroin addict. I cannot express this enough. A heroin addict who keeps roadkill in his freezer and said that he had a parasitic brain worm that ate part of his brain. Your treatment options are gonna be removed by somebody like that. What does it mean when somebody with these views has a natural platform? Well, we're seeing it right now because he's in charge of the Health and Human Services, and he's writing policies now that are going to cascade down and affect people in a very, very real way in a very, very short amount of time. We're legitimizing pseudoscience in policy making, magical thinking. We're legitimizing it because it's possible. Well, because it's possible, then it's real. Listen, there's a lot of things that are possible that are complete bullshit when they're tested out. And you're demonizing things that have been safe for millions of people. And it's not only about protecting the science and science-backed things, but it's also about protecting the safety, because you're going through stuff that's been proven millions and millions of times over to things that aren't proven at all. They're just ideas and concepts somebody dreamt up in their head. And now you're also playing with human rights, because you are literally forcing autistic people to be registered on your registry against their will for reasons they don't understand and reasons that you can't articulate, you will not articulate to us. Okay? So, the thing I'm going to leave you with is I want you to research and critically examine RFK's positions before you jump on this Make America Healthy bandwagon again. Because there is some insidious stuff that's being Trojan horsed on you under the auspices of we're making you healthy, we're making America better. Link up with neurodivergent led organizations and talk to neurodivergent people and engage people. Don't avoid somebody that says they're autistic or somebody that says they have ADHD or somebody says they have depression. Engage them, support them. If they come to you with fear, don't try to dissuade their fear. Just let them know you understand and be a willing ear and willing to sit down and listen to them. Okay? Neurodivergent people aren't broken. And we deserve respect, autonomy, and access to care. What we don't deserve is some guy that just has an idea and stereotypes in his head dictating how we are to be treated. And we're going to follow up on this live stream because there's so much more to say about this. And I actually want to have a conversation with people in the stream. I want to invite people in to have this conversation on that level. And so that's what I want to do. And that's eventually, I'm going to revisit this topic because this is going to be a topic for the next 4 or 5 years, y'all. The fallout is going to be long lasting. So I apologize for the abridged work co-working live stream. We'll be back next Friday, and I'm really be focusing on the co-working side of it. I'm also going to be in my other studio. I'm comfortable with StreamYard, but I need to figure out how to make Meld Studio work, and I'm going to force this thing to work because I think that's going to be my long-term solution as opposed to dealing with the pricing on StreamYard and the limited functionality that I have. So it's going to look a little bit different, and it's a work in progress, y'all. So I'm gonna be in my Meld studio instead of StreamYard next week. And so, and there's always hiccups when you're trying out new software, but I think that's going to be the pathway I go moving forward because I don't want to pay another month for this. This is $50 a month, and I'm not getting out of it what I put into it. So, all right, that's all I got. Appreciate y'all tuning in with me. If you see this, leave a like. If you want to have more of this conversation, let me know. Make sure you give this a like and let me know. Share this with somebody. All the stuff. Okay, because most of the people that watch this don't follow me. And so you could fix that because I'm here every Friday. I'm here every Monday. So, and I'm here every Tuesday with Fearless. And I do a live stream with him as well on Tuesday morning. So you have plenty of time to access me. But again, it's Brian. Thanks for sitting there and listening to me rant. I will talk to y'all later. Have a great weekend. Hopefully you got some work done in between my rants, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.